Everyone thinks they know what strength looks like. Loud voices, big wins, unshakable confidence. But here's the strange part. Some people grow stronger in ways that don't look like strength at all. In fact, from the outside, it can look awkward, unusual, even weak. That's what makes it so easy to miss. While everyone else is chasing the obvious signs of power, Sigma males are building something deeper in ways that most can't even see. And once you notice how they do it, you realize why nothing seems to shake them. Here are 7 odd ways Sigmas build emotional strength, patterns that slip under the radar yet explain why they stay steady when others fall apart. Number 1. Sit with pain instead of running from it. Most people treat pain like it's poison. The second it shows up, they'll do anything to drown it out. Some people bury themselves in work. Others turn to noise. Endless scrolling, constant distractions, whatever keeps the silence away. Anything but facing what actually hurts. And at first glance, that seems normal. After all, who wants to sit with heartbreak, disappointment, or the crushing weight of failure? But here's where things take a strange turn. While most people run, some don't. Some sit in the middle of the fire and let it burn. And more often than not, Sigma males fall into this category, not because they wanted to, but because life forced them there. From a young age, they've had to handle things alone. No hand-holding, no safety nets. When pain came knocking, there was no escape route, no one to clean up the mess. The only option was to face it. And that repeated exposure changes you. It makes you realize something most people never learn. Pain doesn't last forever. It crashes, it shakes you, and then it passes. But what stays behind is different. Each time, you come out a little tougher, a little clearer, a little less afraid of the next wave. That's why Sigmas don't break down as easily when life gets rough. They've already carried more than they were supposed to. And when you've trained in silence like that, storms don't scare you anymore. They don't destroy you. They shape you. Number 2. Treat silence like a weapon, not a weakness. There's a strange thing about silence. Most people treat it like an emergency. A pause in conversation feels like failure. A quiet room feels like something's wrong. That panic to fill the gap isn't random. It comes from how we're wired. Psychologists call it social noise anxiety. The instinct to avoid being judged in moments of stillness. And that's why most people can't sit with silence without reaching for a phone, a joke, or an excuse. Sigma men don't flinch the same way. For them, silence was never something to escape. It was the background of their life. Growing up more inward-facing, they didn't always have the option of constant chatter or endless reassurance. That shaped them to view quiet as natural, even useful. Over time, they began to notice what silence does to others. How people rush to explain themselves, overshare secrets, or reveal nerves they were trying to hide. From a psychological angle, this comes down to high introspection and low dependence on external approval. Sigma men simply don't tie their worth to constant interaction. And because of that, they can sit in silence without their self-image cracking. Ironically, that calm unsettles others. The silence becomes louder than words. What makes this powerful isn't mystery or manipulation. It's restraint. Sigma males let silence pull truth out of people while protecting their own position. That's why when everything else gets loud and messy, their quiet presence often says the most. Number 3. Turn failure into your training ground. Failure is one of the most common fears people carry. For most, it's not just about losing. It's about what comes after. The shame, the judgment, the feeling that maybe they're not good enough. That's why so many people avoid risk altogether. They'd rather play it safe than face the mental wreckage of falling short. But Sigma males process failure differently, and it's not because they're born fearless. It's because life cornered them into it. When you grow up without someone always catching you, You learned early that failure isn't optional. It's guaranteed. You screw up, you lose, you fall behind. And no one swoops in to make it easier. That repeated exposure rewires the brain. Instead of associating failure with shame, Sigmas start associating it with adaptation. The Sigma personality tends to score high on traits like introversion, independence, and analytical thinking. This combination pushes them inward rather than outward when things go wrong. Where many people tie failure to external judgment. What will others think of me? Sigmas are less socially driven, so their self-worth isn't as tightly attached to outside approval. That reduces the shame spiral most people fall into. The sting is still there. Failure always hurts, but they've trained themselves to translate pain into information. And once failure becomes a teacher instead of a threat, it loses its power to paralyze you. That's why Sigma men rarely spiral after a setback. They've been conditioned to see every collapse as part of the process. To them, failure isn't proof they're weak. It's proof they're still learning. And that mindset creates a kind of resilience most people never reach because they never allow themselves to fail enough to grow. Number 4. Let go of needing to be understood. One of the hardest truths about life is that people will misunderstand you no matter what you do. You'll be judged on half-stories, quick impressions, and assumptions that have nothing to do with who you really are. For most people, this cuts deep. They spend years explaining themselves, defending every choice, desperate to prove they're not who others think they are. And yet, no matter how much they talk, the judgment never fully disappears. This is where Sigmas take a different road, not because they don't care, but because they've been forced to live in that space for so long that they realized something others never see. You don't win the battle for understanding. The more you fight it, the more energy you bleed out. At some point, it becomes clear. Peace comes not from being understood, but from carrying on anyway. Instead of relying on reassurance, Sigmas lean on something psychologists call internal framing. They filter the world through their own logic before they let it touch their emotions. That means misunderstanding doesn't land as an attack. It registers as noise that doesn't pass their filter. Like the old saying goes, not everyone will get your story, and that's fine. It wasn't written for them. For Sigma males, that mindset shifts misunderstanding from a wound into something they can simply walk past. And here's the paradox. Once you stop trying to prove yourself, you become harder to control. Misunderstanding no longer chains you down. It just becomes background noise. For Sigmas, letting go of the need to be understood isn't about pride or rebellion. It's survival. And that survival slowly transforms into strength, the kind that no opinion can touch. Number 5. Build a life bigger than yourself. One of the quickest ways to feel fragile in life is to make everything about you. When your entire identity is tied to personal wins, every failure feels catastrophic. Every rejection cuts deeper. Every mistake becomes proof that you're not enough. That self-centered frame of living magnifies every blow until even small setbacks feel overwhelming. Sigma men tend to escape this trap by orienting their lives towards something greater than their own ego. Sometimes it's a cause, sometimes it's a craft, sometimes it's people they quietly protect or provide for. Whatever the outlet, it gives their struggles context. Hard days aren't just about me suffering. They're about staying steady so the bigger mission doesn't collapse. Psychologist Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, captured this truth from the most brutal conditions imaginable, the Nazi concentration camps. He noticed that prisoners who focused only on their suffering were more likely to collapse under the weight of despair, but those who held on to a vision, reuniting with their loved ones, continuing their unfinished work, or believing their pain still served a greater purpose, often endured longer, even when their bodies were failing. Meaning didn't erase the suffering, but it gave them a reason to carry it. For Sigma males, this isn't about preaching or trying to look noble. It's practical. Purpose distributes the weight. When you're connected to something larger, you don't just carry your own pain, you carry it for the sake of what matters most to you. And that makes the load bearable. That's why their strength doesn't come off as brittle or forced. It comes from knowing their life is more than a scoreboard of personal wins. And when life throws its hardest punches, that bigger anchor keeps them standing. Number 6. Become comfortable with uncertainty. Most people crave control. They want solid plans, clear answers, and guarantees about how things will turn out. The unknown makes them restless, even panicked, because it strips away the illusion of safety. That's why so many cling to routines, titles, or other people to anchor themselves. It's a way of hiding from life's unpredictability. But for those with a Sigma personality, uncertainty is not just tolerated. It's baked into their way of living. They don't chase security in the traditional sense. Instead, they learn to walk with the unknown like it's a permanent companion. And that gives them a strange edge. While others freeze when the ground shifts, Sigmas keep moving. Here's the psychology behind it. They tend to operate with high levels of cognitive flexibility. That means their brains are wired to shift perspectives quickly when old plans collapse. Where rigid thinkers get stuck on, "This shouldn't be happening," flexible thinkers ask, "What now?" Over time, that habit reshapes their tolerance for chaos. The unknown stops feeling like an enemy and starts feeling like a space with possibilities. And make no mistake, uncertainty still stings. It brings stress, just like it does for everyone else. The difference is, Sigma males let that stress sharpen their awareness instead of paralyzing them. Psychologists call this stress inoculation. Repeated exposure to unpredictability builds resistance. That's why, when other people break down under sudden change, Sigma men often look strangely steady. They're not calm because life is easy. They're calm because they've trained themselves to function without a script. Number 7. Stop trying to be good at everything. Modern life makes it seem like you have to be a jack of all trades just to keep up. At work, at home, even in social circles, people feel like they're constantly performing, trying to prove they can handle anything thrown their way. It looks impressive on the surface, but inside, it quietly drains them. Nobody admits it, but the stress of keeping every plate spinning eventually breaks them down. Sigma males stand out here not because they're extraordinary, but because they felt firsthand what happens when you spread yourself too thin. While most people are chasing approval by saying yes to everything, these men lean the other way. They'd rather be sharp in a few areas than average in all of them. It doesn't always look glamorous. Sometimes it makes them seem less capable to others. But long-term, it builds strength where it actually counts. Psychologists link this to a trait called selective focus. Instead of scattering mental energy everywhere, their mind locks onto what feels meaningful and lets the rest fade into the background. It's not that they don't care about weaknesses, they just don't measure themselves by them. And because their self-worth isn't wrapped up in looking perfect, they don't collapse under the pressure of not being good at everything. The flip is this: what looks like limitation is actually strategy. By narrowing their energy, they gain depth where it matters most. And when life hits hard, it's not the well-rounded person who holds up best. It's the one who built solid ground beneath their feet.